I'm pretty sure that given the nature of my scripted videos on this channel, you'd be surprised if I told you that I used to not enjoy horror-related content. For many years I avoided it, it wasn't my thing. Until FNAF came along, that is, and I discovered a kind of horror I did enjoy. And during that time of refusing to watch anything horror-related, I missed out on what was, at the time, a new web series on YouTube that everyone seemed to be talking about. Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared. That's not to say that I knew nothing about it, but I was on Tumblr at the time, and I remember the gifs from the first 2 episodes and even the Padlock fan art that crossed my feed. I also have vague memories of the hostage-style fundraiser videos for the Kickstarter, and some images of the most horrific parts of healthy eating, and the final YouTube video. I was curious, but avoided it mainly because I don't really enjoy gore. I still don't really. But then, in the last few years, the news started to go around about a TV series for the show, and the first teaser trailer came out depicting an entire town called Clay Hill. Then, things went silent again, before it was announced that they would be making a 6-episode series for Channel 4 here in the UK. The previous trailer's new setting was out, and the series would be sticking with the same 3 characters learn a lesson from an anthropomorphic depiction of the subject format from the YouTube videos, but a little bigger, grander. It came out, vids of funny clips went up on YouTube, and finally, after all this time, I watched the YouTube videos in preparation for watching the TV series. And I knew I needed to make a video on what I think is going on during those 6 made-for-television episodes. Although I've put it off for a bit out of fear of maybe getting some content ID issues with Channel 4 popping up, but a recent rewatch of the TV episode with my partner refired my theorist brain, and I might take my original small idea and build it out to be stronger than before. As a starting point, I'll be taking the popular theory of Don't Hug Me I'm Scared being a show idea that was funded by Roy, but twisted by commercialism, referred to as the media theory from now on. One which Red Guy eventually pulls the plug on, and takes the idea with him to start smaller with an online series. This is the foundation upon which I'll be building my own little theory, so if you're not familiar with the media theory, it might be worth reading up on it if you can. I'll be giving a little background, but not going into great detail, because the theory's been around for a while, and I'm assuming many people already know the basics of the web series being a twisted children's edutainment show ruined by advertising. Also, obligatory warning for disturbing content as always. Take care of your own mental well-being, and if, like me, you find gore and gross things to not be your thing, maybe avoid the video, or just listen to it in the background. I don't really plan to elaborate on the gory bits verbally in this video anyway. Also, there are going to be spoilers for both the web videos and the TV series because I couldn't really make this theory without going into any of that. So, if you've not had a chance to watch it and don't wish to be spoiled, best watch the web episodes and or the TV series before continuing with this video. If you're able. There might be access issues for the TV series outside of the UK. I'm not entirely sure. I do encourage you to find a legal path to watch it if you can. So, if you're ready, then let us, as always, begin. So, let's first establish what we're talking about here with that background I mentioned earlier. The show is set up like a typical children's edutainment show that teaches basic concepts like time and family, but always goes off the rail in often very disturbing ways. The 3 central characters are Red Guy, Yellow Guy, and Duck. I think you can tell who is who. The theory goes that Don't Hug Me I'm Scared, a children's edutainment show, was an idea that Red Guy had for a television show. However, he didn't find much success with selling the ideas to others until a man named Roy approached him. Roy funded the show, got it on air, but had a lot of control over the show. He filled this show that was meant to be completely for the sake of teaching children with advertisements for his products, effectively using the show to sell things to younger and more impressionable audiences covertly. He also shoved his own son, Yellow Guy, into being a part of the show, not because of nepotism, but for some reason to punish him for something, according to the one canon quote we had from him during that time. Eventually, Red Guy found another way for the show to make it independently with a smaller budget online, and escaped the show before pulling the plug on it entirely to reboot the series without Roy. That's a quick and basic summary of the media theory, but as I've said, it's best to look it up for more details if you're interested. So that begs the question, if Red Guy pulled the plug on the show to go independent, then just what is the TV series? It's clearly in the same format as the web series was, an edutainment show, with exactly the same 3 characters as before. It seems to be exactly the same show. Just what is going on? For that, we need to start by continuing to see the TV series through the lens of this being a show someone is running. Keeping in mind that we're following the theory of Don't Hug Me I'm Scared being a show that was created by Red Guy and then bankrolled and corrupted by Roy. At the point of the end of the web series, we have a show that has just lost one of the 2 people at its head, who has simply taken the stars of the show with him too. Roy might still have the money to fund the show and some ownership of the idea, but without Red Guy, the inspiration and ideas would have gone with it, and so have the people who were in the show on screen. So what would Roy do next to potentially make use of this property? My theory is he is partnered now with someone new, and what we're seeing in the TV show is the attempts of this person and Roy to reboot the show without relying on the previous ideas that came from Red Guy. Let me explain. When looking at the episodes of the TV show as a whole, I found that all of the episodes seem to contain some common plot lines that you will often see in a fanfiction or in attempts to drastically rewrite an existing narrative. Jobs is an episode set in a workplace, essentially being a workplace AU that sees 2 of the 3 characters having an entirely different life, where they know each other and interact mainly through work. Death contains a regular character of the cast dying, and the other's reaction to this, then tries the addition of an entirely new character with a malleable and somewhat ill-defined personality, who eventually just ends up becoming a replacement for the dead and missing character, before the dead character is re-added. Family has one character finding a long-lost family, at least for a moment, and another being adopted into a family to replace his abusive parent, albeit unwillingly. Friendship could be seen as a turning the tables narrative, because it sees the 3 main characters pretty much winning outright against the teacher instead of the other way round. Transport sees our characters being taken away from their common setting and put into a new place entirely, travelling to maybe find a new place. And finally, Electricity has Yellow Guy switch from being dim to being smart. These are all attempts to change the status quo, but they always reverse in the end as the ideas either fail to take root or are rejected by someone. Electricity even contains some things that could be seen as larger retools of the show. While Yellow Guy is climbing the stairs in the house, he encounters some different versions of both Red Guy and Duck in the Big Boy room and the Bigger Boys room, and I see both of these rooms as other reboot ideas that were had. The Big Boy room is the same sort of edutainment show, but for older children, as the lessons we see are both the sort you would teach an older child, boundaries and basic geology/rocks. Also, the Red Guy and Duck in that room express an attitude common of older children, that they are smarter and more mature than the people who learn 1 lesson at a time, i.e. young children, because they can learn 2 lessons at once. Big Red Guy also has his catchphrase of "try to keep up, mate," which suggests he thinks of himself as superior. Meanwhile, the Bigger Boys room could be an attempt to take the learning aspect of the show and turn the show into something that they think would appeal to older teens and young adults. Something overly cruel and maybe a little too crude, trying too hard to appeal to an older audience and be edgy. With all this in mind, we now move to something that comes towards the end of the TV series, the reveal of Leslie and the revelations she seems to bring in her brief appearance in episode 6. Leslie is a strange entity in this world of Don't Hug Me I'm Scared. Unlike every other character who are some form or other of puppet, she is played by a live action actor, albeit one who turned to have some patches of fabric attached to her face. She resides a few floors up from where the main cast spend their days, and is discovered by Yellow Guy when he gets his batteries changed and becomes able to see the staircase in their house that is usually hidden by the angle the camera is facing into the rooms. After a few rooms of alternate red guys and ducks, he finds himself in what seems to be an attic room with Leslie playing a piano with a dollhouse on top. It is revealed that the dollhouse matches the house, with even dolls of the puppets, and it seems like she is the one controlling their reality via it. This means that she plays some sort of important role here, but given we see yet another stairway leading up above Leslie, it suggests that there might be someone even above her. So despite her level of control and the hints that she is somehow their god, I don't think Leslie is actually as in control of Don't Hug Me I'm Scared as Red Guy or Roy are or were. So in that case, what is she to the show? Why does she have control of the characters, yet is somehow underneath the sway of another unknown person? What do her statements to Yellow Guy about him being one of her favourites and not her real son mean? And how and why does she seemingly have multiple backups of the characters for when the current dolls somehow get broken? To answer this, we need to continue to think of the situation I've set out for the show's current situation. Roy and the other person are continuing to run the show, but are trying to reinvent it, but they need ideas. And that's what I think Leslie is there for. Leslie is the new main writer for the show, using the dollhouse to act out the story ideas she has, and even starting episodes by acting out the beginning of the typical introduction by turning the dollhouse on a hand-cranked turntable. I also think that the piano itself might play a part in controlling the Don't Hug Me I'm Scared world, as the machine that controls things in web episode 6, Dreams, quite noticeably has 2 big rows of piano keys as a part of it. One thing that leads me to think of her as the new writer is that a big feature of her room are the shaped windows, through which Yellow Guy sees a number of important items from stories of the series, the Chuddle Dollops family pack, the shovel, and a pair of batteries. She's also the person who, at the end of Transport, brings the story to a close by bringing the trio back to the house, albeit using the dolls, and even narrates a dream Yellow Guy has in that same episode. I even think that Yellow Guy going upstairs might itself be a story she's currently writing, as we see pictures on the wall of Yellow Guy climbing as he climbs. As is the conclusion, as she mentions having to fix the lights not working in her dollhouse when it doesn't turn on, foreshadowing the fixing of the downstairs blackout which required Yellow Guy to lose his newfound intelligence and thus the book she had given him. However, I also think that beyond that, Leslie might have also been a fan, or at least a supporter of Don't Hug Me I'm Scared's original show before she became its new writer and source for ideas. As I mentioned before, she makes reference to Yellow Guy being one of her favourites, and that could mean she liked his character, and her only response to Yellow Guy's question about creating all this is a laugh, and she tells him that he's not her real son, which does suggest that she didn't actually create them all, and is instead using an idea that somebody else came up with originally. Tony, Colin and the lab all reappeared during the TV series, so she knew the characters existed and brought them back in minor cameos to help fill some roles in her stories. Speaking of which, Leslie also has a tendency to monologue in rhyme, something that Tony the Clock also did at the end of his episode of the web series, one of the more popular episodes of the web videos.
Journeys made and lessons learned. You may feel like you're alone, but no matter how much the wheels turn, the journey always ends up back at home.
It's out of my hands, I'm only a clock. Don't worry, I'm sure you'll be fine. But eventually everyone runs out of time.
Batteries can be replaced, but some things stay the same. No matter how we twist and turn, we're still dancing in chains.
For me, it makes sense. After all, who better to work on retooling an idea than someone who already loves the show? But I do think that the constant rewrites and rejections of ideas by whoever is above her is beginning to grate upon her, and is slowly drawing her into the madness that the Don't Hug Me I'm Scared world is filled with. She has a tendency to go from her kind demeanour towards Yellow Guy to suddenly shouting, which suggests some frustrations with the subject she is talking about, creating the "don't hug me, I'm scared" world, and Yellow Guy not being her real son. The fact that during the blackout, Red Guy and Duck find a number of the past teachers seemingly dead in the darkness could also hint at a previous and recent angry outburst from Leslie that saw her essentially destroying a massive chunk of what came before. Maybe in an attempt to see if it would spur new ideas for the show to move forward. Something that could also explain the unique introduction of the episode, which sees her spinning the dollhouse really fast around on the turntable to start the episode, but in a rather frantic manner. Also, as mentioned before, while Leslie is played by someone live action, she has patches of fabric on her face, and I believe that's a sign she's slowly being consumed by her work, her efforts to write a believable and acceptable new version of the show she loves. I also think that she's having some trouble keeping characterization straight, which can be seen with the lamp having a voice which sounds nothing like his original one. He now seems to have a voice closer to Shrignold, the butterfly from Love. Although this could also be another side of a reboot through a change of voice actor, which is actually what's happened in real life. But I do think there's more evidence to point to whoever is writing having trouble keeping characters in the show straight. Because if you look close enough and really think about it, every single one of the main three characters has at least one instance in the TV series where they act out of character. Red Guy is the easiest to point this out about. In the web series he is monotone for the most part, most likely to lampshade the teachers and not get drawn into whatever twisted ridiculousness they bring with them. While he does still act like this sometimes, for example at the start of Jaws when he wants to continue their day of doing nothing, he is drawn into things much easier than before. Again, in Jobs he becomes a manager and it is Duck who remains unaffected. He also tends to speak with more emotion now, specifically shouting on a handful of occasions. While he did have one instance of raising his voice in the original web series, when he tells Colin to shut up being computers, he didn't really shout or emote much when doing so in that episode. So to have him shouting now feels a little out of character. With Yellow Guy, it's a bit harder to pin down, but I do feel as if his status as the child stand-in has been flanderized somewhat into showing him as being very stupid. While he certainly wasn't the brightest spark before in the web series, I do feel like the TV show played it up a lot more. There's also the fight at the end of Friendship, in which all three of the characters get into a brawl which seems the most out of character for Yellow Guy in particular. Mostly though, he does still seem to be in character, which would track with him potentially being Leslie's favourite, and thus the one she would know the character of best. Duck though is a very different character to how he was in the web series to how he is now in the TV show. While he didn't have a very defined character in the web series, he wasn't quite like how he is now. While he still had some meaner traits to him in the web videos, such as squishing the butterfly Yellow Guy was watching in Love, he too has had his character somewhat flanderized, becoming a much more selfish and jerkish character in the process. As I said though, his character wasn't so strictly defined in the web series, so I could see how this point could be argued against. But then, if we do go down the route of the TV show being a reboot of the series in a world where the media theory happened, then how did they lure back Red Guy and the others in the first place? After all, the ending of the media theory suggests that Red Guy left and took the others with him to start his show again independent of Roy's influence. It also suggests that Red Guy did this because he disliked the commercialism Roy was forcing into the show. So it seems strange that he would return to a show that he's supposedly running himself elsewhere. Well, one of the things that happens in Leslie's room as Yellow Guy is helping her fix things as she asks, is that when placing the duck figure into the dollhouse, Yellow Guy accidentally breaks its head off. Leslie though tells him that she has backups for that reason, and we see a drawer full of little dolls of the characters, specifically Duck, but it stands to reason that she would have more of the others too. And that's what I think is happening. The versions we are watching here are not the ones from the web series. Red Guy did escape, did take the show with him, did start again, and it's been replaced in the show by a backup who acts mostly like Red Guy but will fall into the teacher's traps and also shouts more. I also believe the Duck has also been replaced with a backup, which explains why he's a much meaner character now. I think that Yellow Guy is a special case, as I think my theory about the reboot suggests that Yellow Guy didn't escape the show originally with Red Guy and Duck. After all, how could he? He's Roy's son. I don't think Roy would have let him go, and in fact would have actively prevented it. He did, after all, make his son a part of the show to punish him, and there's still been no sign of Yellow Guy's mother. But speaking of Roy, what involvement does he have in these reboot attempts? The thing about Roy as far as the TV series goes is that he seems to have much less control over this series as opposed to the web series, though his same products can still be seen as set dressing with the TV series as they were with the web series. Whether this is because he realises that he drove Red Guy away, or because during the sale of the property he had to give over a lot of rights, I don't know. But I do think he's continuing to keep an eye on the show, hence why he continues to show up in the background of episodes and in the crossword, and for a second in the typical introduction of the show. You know, the one that isn't Leslie manically spinning the dollhouse round and round in a terrifying way. He's making sure that Leslie and whoever is above her aren't going to change his show in ways he doesn't approve of. This is why I think he shows up in person at the end of Family, when Lily and Todney's family attempts to essentially press gang Yellow Guy into their own family as their mother. An attempt to rewrite Yellow Guy's backstory to retcon him as Yellow Guy's father, and as we see, he's not exactly pleased by it. While he does seem to just be there for the chicken and to devour the family around it, he noticeably gives Yellow Guy a shove back, telling his son to leave. While I do not believe Roy cares that much for his son, I do believe that he wouldn't tolerate someone else having control over him by family ties like this, and wanted Yellow Guy out of the way while he dealt with the issue. Given that before he showed up, Yellow Guy was beginning to quote the same things as the family was, maybe Yellow Guy was also on the cusp of actually being assimilated into it, and Roy was trying to get his son out of the way to prevent it actually finishing. He could also be trying to prevent any escape his son could make, both during his moment in Family, and by disguising himself as a beggar to get himself into the car during transport. We can also notice that in both the Big Boy room and the Bigger Boys room, that while there are alternate Red Guys and Ducks, there are no alternate Yellow Guys. Indeed, both sets seem to have been waiting for Yellow Guy to arrive. I think this is because there are no spares for Yellow Guy. There doesn't need to be, as this is still the original one from the web series, trapped and forced to continue by his father, Roy. It does seem like the residents of both the Big Boy room and the Bigger Boys room expect Yellow Guy to eventually graduate up to their level with them. So that might even possibly be yet another considered narrative thread Leslie is toying with. And I do feel as if the other person who Roy partnered with is trying to get rid of Roy. There might be the chance that because Roy's beggar version appears in episode 5 of the series, towards the end, that he lost a lot of money as a result of all of this attempted rebooting. And in the next episode, Electricity, Tracy is unique among the teachers in that she doesn't twist her lesson at all, or seem to mean the trio any harm, unlike any episode Roy previously had control over. As well, alongside the teachers we see dead, we do also see Roy lying in the background. So I do wonder if the person above Leslie has used her influence over the world and the fact that Roy's a part of it to essentially remove him from the picture. Or at least make the attempt, as he does still have normal eyes as compared to the X'd out eyes of the dead teachers. Regardless of whether Roy is dead or not, it does feel like someone is out to remove him. What does this mean for the future of the show and of Yellow Guy? I will admit that a lot of this theory is guesswork, and it's far from the only theory about the Don't Hug Me I'm Scared TV series. Other people out there probably see something very different, and that's the joy of theorising, really. We get to interpret things in our own ways, and I know that even with the web series, There are people who don't see it as set out in the media theory. My own perception is coloured by my love of storytelling and narratives, as well as having spent many years online interacting with several communities of fanfiction writers, which is why I see an attempted reboot in Don't Hug Me I'm Scared TV series. Let's hope we get a second season eventually. More fuel for more theories. I hope you can see where I'm coming from with my own little theory here, and if you disagree with it, that's fine. I'm perfectly sure there's some of you out there saying that I've taken certain things too seriously, that a character acted like they did for the sake of a joke, no more. And I'm aware of that, but isn't reading too deeply into something just part of the fun of it all? After all, being creative should all be one of our favourite ideas.